Welcome to the Conservative Voice Daily. I'm your host, Gary Heasley. If you would please remember to like and share and subscribe. Do all those things to help us grow the channel on whatever platform you find us on. Well, it looks like Donald Trump has once again stuck his finger in a hornet's nest when he came out the other day on Air Force One and said he thought that the United States should start buying more beef from Argentina. Of course, farmers reacted angrily saying, hey, we want you to buy our beef. We're feeling a lot of market stress. Consumers in many cases came out and said, we don't want Argentinian beef. We want American beef. We don't want imported products. Of course, that makes sense. But the problems we're having include really, really high prices. You've all been to the grocery store. You know we're paying a lot more for those steaks and hamburgers we love so much. And there's a reason for that. A couple of reasons, really. One, we eat a lot of meat. In 2020, the United States crossed the line of 264 pounds per person in meat. Now that's beef and pork, that's chicken, it's all meat. But with beef alone, the United States consumer is averaging 59 pounds per person. We're buying 59 pounds per American, and that turns out to create about a 20 billion pound market for beef. Now in that market, we export and we import. But one of the problems is that we have to have something to export or import or eat. And when you look at our cattle herd, it's at a 70-year low. So we simply don't have the amount of cattle we used to have. How much has that fallen? If you look at just 1985 to 2025, you'll see that our cattle herd is down from 115 million head to about 65 million head. That's 50 million fewer cattle in the United States now than 40 years ago. What's happened to the population in that time? Well, of course, our population has surged. We went up to about 330, 340 million people. We have 100 million more people in this country today than we had in 1985. So the problem is obvious. We've got 50 million fewer cattle. We've got 100 million more people. And that means we've got a tight market for beef. And remember, we export. If you look at just 2024, we exported about 3 billion pounds in 2024, and it went to places like Mexico, China, South Korea, Japan. You know, we export around the world. So now we also import, right? We import a lot. If you look back at 2024, we imported about 4.64 billion pounds of beef in 2024. It's a lot of beef. Argentina was not one of our major suppliers. We bought it from Australia, we bought it from Canada, Mexico, and of course Brazil. But not a lot from Argentina. So now we're looking at, in 2025, more than 5 billion pounds of beef being purchased. So we're increasing our overseas purchases. Our market is growing. We don't have the herd we need to support it, and that means we need to go overseas. But in 2025, we will be about 2 billion pounds short on beef. That's about 10% of our market. So you're looking at a market where no matter what Trump does, whether he likes Argentina or hates Argentina, the United States is going to import 2 billion pounds more than it exports this year. Where's it going to come from then, of course, becomes the question. One of our great suppliers is always Mexico. Well, Mexico's got a little problem. Turns out the Mexican herd is suffering from a flesh-eating pest. One of the reasons our prices are up is because our supply from Mexico is constrained because they got a flesh-eating pest. Now, that's not something we can easily fix, maybe. You know, it'll get solved, I'm sure. But in the meantime, we still need to import 5 billion pounds of beef, regardless of what Donald Trump does. So where are we going to get it? Well, why not Argentina? You know, Argentina's our friend. They're surrounded by socialist countries. You know, Bolivia and others just run by Marxists. They are in an economy that's struggling. They produce a lot of beef. Why not buy from Argentina? You know, there really is no reason, and it will not hurt the local farmer. The problem the local farmer is facing, well, there are a couple. One is, of course, occasionally it's the weather. Droughts sometimes will impact the local farms, and, you know, weather's a big factor for them. But that doesn't change the beef herd the way it has over the last 40 years. That doesn't change the amount of things we've seen, not just in local farms, but in small business. There are really two factors that are really squeezing the farmer. One is regulation. Over the last 40 years, the United States has implemented uncountable regulations. Every regulation that's added is a moat for big business. What I mean is, every regulation that comes on that affects a business means that that business has to have the accountants, the lawyers, and the experts to comply with that regulation. As the regulations pile up, of course, who can afford to hire the consultants and the accountants and the lawyers? Well, big businesses can. The global corporations can. But the small business and the small farm have a really hard time with that. So regulations are a huge burden on farms, and that's been a big factor in driving farms out of business. The other factor, of course, is inflation. It's affecting all businesses. It's affecting every consumer. And what drives inflation? Of course, regulation does. It drives up cost, and also the money printing. In 2019, the federal government spent about $4.5 trillion. Now we're spending about $7 trillion. We didn't pick up an extra country to regulate. We didn't pick up an extra responsibility somewhere. The government's just $2.5 trillion bigger than it was a few years ago. And where's that money come from? Well, they print it. So the $2 trillion deficit we have this year is going to drive massive inflation in the United States. Until we stop printing money and curtail these regulations, we aren't going to get relief from inflation. It's not going to stop. And when you look at ground beef costs, you'll see that ground beef in 1985 was $1.31 a pound. In 2025, the average ground beef in the United States, $6.32. An amazing number, a shocking number. But as long as we're printing money and driving regulations, that's not going to change. We're going to see prices keep rising. Consumers and small businesses are going to get crushed. Here's the good news. The Trump administration is targeting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of irrelevant, unhelpful, burdensome regulations. Those regulations add about $4 trillion of cost to the United States. That means that consumers and businesses are paying about $4 trillion in compliance cost to keep up with these regulations that the government just keeps spewing out like an exploding volcano. If Trump's administration is successful in curtailing these regulations, in cutting back on this regulatory burden, we can see some relief from price increases. We could see some relief from this incredible pressure on small business. And it's obvious that they're going to do it. Now, the other problem of getting the federal government to stop spending money, that's a challenge that no one's been able to meet yet. We're seeing no sign of interest in either the Republican or the Democrat Party to reduce costs. The Republicans are trying to hold spending exactly where it was when Biden was in office, a ridiculously high number, and the Democrats are demanding more money be spent. So I don't know how we fix the fake money printing in D.C. That's a challenge for tomorrow. But it's good news that the Trump administration is fighting to reduce the regulations that have put such a squeeze on the small farm. Now, in the meantime, we need 5 billion pounds of beef in this country that we don't have, and we're going to get it somewhere. And I say, why not get it from Argentina? They're an ally. They're struggling. We need the beef. They have beef. It really doesn't hurt anyone. And remember, we're buying that 5 billion pounds of beef whether Donald Trump likes Argentina or thinks we should get it from some other country. It doesn't matter where he thinks we should get it. We're going to need the 5 billion pounds. That's not a hit on small farmers. They don't have the beef. It's a problem that we may want to address structurally. Maybe we'll want to regrow our beef industry. I think that's a great idea. But in the meantime, Americans want to eat, and they want to eat steak. And so it's going to come from somewhere. And again, I say, let's just get it from Argentina. I think Trump's got a great idea. He should move forward with that. And American consumers should be able to get maybe some relief on pricing. And certainly they should be able to get the beef that they demand.